And are you refreshed? Yes. Good. Now what is it you're wanting to talk about? Stand if you think it's you. Yes.
I am so truly blessed to be up here. Thank you so much for all of the guidance that I receive. This has been a wonderful experience. I have felt that you have spoken to me on so many occasions, and I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to talk to you personally about some individual guidance. My question is about trust and guidance, or maybe trust in guidance is a better way to put it. Several years ago, I had an opportunity to hear you talk about how you first started working through Esther and how in her meditations she would get the sense of her head moving involuntarily, how you were actually creating letters through her. She was writing words with her nose or writing letters with her nose.
We were offering an impulse that at an unconscious level she was beginning to translate. In other words, when in meditation you get movement and it is not something that you have defined as your intention, it means that you are interpreting an intention from your broader perspective.
And that's what happens to me. And my head gets going very strongly sometimes. And almost every time I meditate, I have been wondering what that is. And is it you coming through?
What it means, it is that broader perspective. You know how when you yawn and you cannot stifle the yawn? That is the cellular asking, and the impulse of thought from broader perspective is causing that. And so in similar manner, everyone without exception has that broader perspective. And when you sit to meditate and you quiet your mind and you therefore release more and more and more resistance so that you are on the same vibrational wavelength of that which is your broader perspective, then the impulse from broader perspective is what is happening. And your next question is
that you coming through? Is that Abraham coming through?
We are not wanting you to try to define it as Abraham. We're wanting you to understand that you all have access to infinite intelligence, that it is, there we are again, that it is your unconscious interpretation of that non-physical part of you. And the name is not important, and in fact is distracting when you try to define it. Esther was told by someone else who was receiving in a similar manner that she would receive a clairaudient experience of her own where she would know, and that is what we wish for you.
And that is what I wish for myself too. It's been something that I have been asking for a very long time. What is this? Is it?
Well, you see, the thing that we want to clarify here is that so often when you get into this place where you are beginning to receive, there is this belief, it is very common with so many of our human friends, that says non-physical is now projecting to me and has all of this information that they are wanting to deliver to me. And what we're wanting you to understand is that we are always there in response to what you are asking for. And so it is your desire and in fact your questions that make it go further. And the thing that is a little screwy with so many people, they don't understand what's happening. Sometimes they can sit like that for months or even years where they're getting those impulses, but it doesn't go further, and then they assume that there is something that is going wrong. And we are wanting to remind you that this process of receiving from non-physical is the same as any other process in which you are the creator, in that there is a step 1 and a step 2 and a step 3. And so as you sit to meditate and you quiet your mind, that is the step 3 allowing part. It's very beneficial if you have someone near you. Esther had the advantage of having Jerry, who was not in a meditative state, who could do the step one part. Or Esther, even when she's wanting to chat with us about something on her own, will identify something that is important to her, and she will get very clear about it and do the step one part even before she sits to meditate, so that there is something that she is wanting to talk about. In the same way that you've prepared to have a chat with us here, you're wanting to prepare to have a chat with those broader resources at any time. And when you have things that you really want to know, and you've been meditating as long as you have, and you sit in a comfortable environment and you release your resistance and you get into that place where you're actually receiving the impulse of your head moving, you are now in the place where you can begin to translate the blocks of thought. And as much as you have heard these blocks of thoughts being translated, it is not a difficult thing for you to do it. But you have to have something that is interesting to you. Sometimes people say to Jerry and Esther that almost as soon as they sit in the chair and begin asking the questions, even along with Abraham's answers, they begin getting answers of their own, because they become in an environment of greater expectation. So that is what is happening for you. And to take it further, we would encourage you to just do more of it. Have things you want to talk about, sit often with the impulse of receiving, and in the beginning especially, do not try to have dialogues back and forth as we are having a dialogue back and forth, because as you may have noticed, Esther is not moving back and forth in her process. She has brought herself to the place of receiving, and she is receiving. You're doing the asking, Abraham's doing the answering, Esther's doing the allowing of the interpretation. So it's not an easy thing for you to do both parts. So get your question framed up and then get into a meditative stance and listen for the thoughts that just begin to come across your mind. And the more you do that, the more you will trust that that is what you are receiving. Also, we want to remind you, because you were talking about your issue of trusting guidance, the majority of your guidance is still not going to come forth in this format, nor would you want it to. People will say to Esther or to Jerry, oh, you are so lucky, because anytime you want, you can have a chat with Abraham. And they do enjoy conversing with us on different subjects, but they do not talk to us as much as you might suppose, because they are gathering so much from the seminars in the same way that you are. Also, we've noticed that as Esther is driving down the street, down the highway in her monster bus with the Yukon in tow, and she's barreling down at that high rate of speed that she always chooses, and we are aware that there is something in her near vicinity that could pose a problem as she is approaching it in the roadway. We do not try to get her to go into a meditative state or even to stop talking to Jerry, which is a very difficult thing, to get them to stop talking to each other ever. In other words, they are always talking to one another. We do not try to get her attention, tug on her sleeve, tug on her ear, and finally get her attention, get her to go into a quieted mind where she will then begin listening for what we have to say. By then, she would have run over whatever it is. What we do is give her an impulse to slow down, and when she feels that impulse to slow down, she will feel her hand unconsciously reaching over and disengaging the cruise control, or she will feel her foot touching the brake, which disengages the cruise control. And always when the speed changes, Jerry will say, what's up? And Esther will say, Abraham is slowing us down. And now she is alert, and now she sees what it is. It's either an erratic driver, or it's a policeman with a radar gun, or it's a piece of a truck tire right in the middle of the way, or it's a rest stop that they intended to stop for that they've both forgotten that is there, or it's a highway sign that they want to see that they're not likely to see if something doesn't happen that gets their attention. In other words, you are getting all kinds of impulses from guidance. And if you will stop once you receive the impulse, and when you are aware that you have been cued and you have received it, and smile and be proud of your receiving of it, more and more and more and more and more of it will happen, until in time you will not feel guidance so much as you will feel oneness with that which is guidance.